financial resources, and capital projects. In addition, a review period, which began on May 30th, 2014, encouraged our residents and advocates concerned about affordable housing in New York to provide written comments on the draft plan for fiscal year 2015 and the significant amendment to the fiscal year 2014 annual plan. These comments were taken via fax, through the mail, and collected at each of the town hall meetings. The draft plan and amendment were made available in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian, and beginning on May 30th, 2014, was available for public inspection at NYCHA's principal office at 250 Broadway, on NYCHA's website, at each local property management office, at all community operations, management, and leased housing borough offices, and at 9 designated community centers. The draft plan and amendment was also sent to all Resident Advisory Board, or RAB, delegates and alternates, to each Resident Association president and Section 8 RAB representatives. In an attempt to accurately reflect NYCHA's most critical priorities and needs, the draft plan is an evolving document and one that benefits from your input. So the purpose of this public hearing is to obtain the views, comments, and recommendations of the public on the draft agency plan and the significant amendment to the 2014 annual plan. Please know that the plan is not final and will be modified before it is submitted to the Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD. Please understand, however, that this evening is not intended as a forum for a verbal exchange. The representatives who will sit on the dais and who you will meet momentarily will not engage in discussions with the speakers, nor will they respond to questions. They are present to hear what you have to say about the draft plan and significant amendment. But before we begin, I would like to introduce NYCHA's Chair and Chief Executive Officer, Shola Olatoye, who will share with us a brief overview of her vision for the New York City Housing Authority. Chair.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see so many of you. My name is Shola Olatoye, and I'm the Chair and Chief Executive Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. I'm so pleased and honored to be here, and an organization of this size is clearly one that is not run by one person. In fact, it's run by 11,215 people, and the leadership of our mayor and many elected officials and my board. And I'm so pleased that members of my board have joined us this evening, as well as members of the NYPD. So first, let me introduce some of our board members and ask them to come out and take their seats. First is Ms. Diane Billings-Buford, Ms. Beatrice Bird, Mr. Victor Gonzalez, Ms. Willie Mae Lewis, Mr. Richard Barron, and Chief Carlos Gomez. Chief Gomez is the Chief of the Housing Bureau and is also here this evening to hear your comments. An example of how closely we are working with the NYPD. Please take your seats. So for many of you, this is maybe not your first annual meeting. It is my first annual meeting, and as the head of this robust organization, I took the license to add a little twist to our agenda this evening. And so we're going to you all are here, I thought would be a great opportunity to present to you our plan and our emerging vision for where we want the Housing Authority to be for another generation. We want public housing to be here, all 179,000 units, to be here for the more than 600,000 residents who call upon NYCHA in some form or fashion, either in our public housing or in our Section 8 program. And so how do we do that? How do we ensure that public housing is around for another generation? When I was appointed to this position, I took the mayor's, I took his mandate very seriously to reset a series of relationships with many of you. And so that's something that we've done and has begun to emerge as a very important part of our work together, our strategic objectives. Whoever's clicking should click forward. Thank you. So first, we really, again, the mayor has asked all of us to work differently, and that means listening to our core stakeholders, our tenants, our community partners, our elected officials, our regulators, members of the financial community, and onward. We also must focus on our core business as the city's largest landlord, ultimately to ensure that the quality of life for our residents is improved. And third, we have to begin a substantive and ground-up conversation about how we ensure and rehabilitate our buildings. Over the past 100+ days, we have gone about resetting those relationships through a 5-borough listening tour. I've had the pleasure of visiting more than 30 developments throughout the city. We've met with more than 2/3 of our elected officials here at the City Council, at the state, at our congressional delegation. I've had an opportunity to meet many of our NYCHA employees or team members, as I call you, all of you. And we heard some things. We heard some very clear demands and concerns about our ability to focus on our core business. Next slide, please. Really focusing on maintenance and repair. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their home. Ensuring that safety and security is a principle that that everyone has the right to. Really focusing on data and transparency. I think this evening is one example of that. You will see on our website something we launched 2 weeks ago called NYCHA Metrics. Our desire to want to share more information both with our internal and external stakeholders. Clearly, as I mentioned, 11,000 people who are really the leaders of this housing authority. How do we develop their talent to ensure, to help us ensure that the housing authority is around for another generation? Obviously, Sandy impacted many communities. Certainly, our public housing residents fared very terribly in that storm. How do we ensure resiliency and recovery is something that is built into our core business? And clearly, addressing our major needs of our buildings. So our vision, next slide please, is about a safe, clean, and connected community. This is something that we all want. This is something that is very basic, and this is something that we must deliver on. And so what we hope to, with all of you and with our residents throughout the city, engage in is a process that, next slide, allows us to identify and create a real funding stream to ensure that our buildings are around for another generation, to really increase and improve our efficiency as a landlord, and to think about our buildings in a sustainable and comprehensive way. And so that is some of the work that we are engaged in. We cannot do it alone, and we look forward to working with all of you in that process and in hearing your comments this evening. Thank you. And I just want to thank Ms. Deirdre Gilliard for her Mistress of Ceremonies role this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, we are now ready to receive public commentary. We hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to express their comments. So, before we begin, let's go over the following ground rules to make sure that this evening will go smoothly for all of us. If you wish to speak, you must first fill out a speaker slip. They look like this, and they are available in the entrance area at the table marked Speaker Sign-In. Once your name has been called, please move towards the microphones in the aisles and wait your turn to speak. If you need the microphone to be transported to you, that will be arranged. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and on the stage to my left, you will see a timer with 3 lights. When you begin to speak, the green light will be on, and the timer will begin to count down. When the yellow light is lit, it means that you should start to conclude your remarks. When the red light is turned on, your 3 minutes to provide comment are over. Please be reminded that a table has been set up outside so that written comments may be also submitted. Numbered speaker slips are non-transferable, and if you are not present or do not wish to speak when your name is called, you will forfeit the opportunity to speak. This hearing is being recorded and transcribed by a stenographer, so please speak only from the microphones in the aisles and identify yourself and your development or affiliation. Remember, we are here to comment on NYCHA's fiscal year 2015 draft annual plan and significant amendment. While we expect this evening to go smoothly, we must remind you that any personal comments on, criticisms of, or all attacks on NYCHA personnel, resident representatives, or public attendees will not be tolerated. I, as the moderator of this evening's meeting, reserve the right to move on to the next speaker online if any comments are deemed inappropriate. Please be considerate of your neighbors and follow the moderator's directions. Remember, we are here to consider issues that are of concern to everyone, not issues that concern only a single resident or individual. However, if you have an issue that concerns only you or your apartment, we do wish to receive your concern, and tables have been set up outside specifically for that purpose. You may fill out a resident response form at the table marked Resident Complaints. The passing of materials, photo taking, and video recordings are not allowed in the auditorium. However, a general information station is available outside where leaflets and flyers may be displayed. Additionally, resource tables have been set up outside with information so that at the end of the meeting, you can pick up information on that which may be of interest to you. We encourage you to learn more about our Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability Department, the work of our Department for Development. We encourage you to learn more about fair housing, our Family Services Department, including Resident Watch and our Safe Horizons programs, and our wide range of citywide programs. Also, at a table outside are copies of the executive summary for the draft annual plan, and they are available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian for review purposes. Now, let us begin. Speaker number 1, Joanne Brown, followed by speaker number 2, Catherine Trapani.
I'm the second person. I just want to make sure Ms. Brown has a chance to come down.
Ms. Brown? She needs the microphone? Okay, we'll bring one to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dignitaries. My name is Joanne Brown, and I'm from Warren Street Houses, and I'm also the Vice President of 572 and 574. My concern is the young lady named Tiffany Thomas. She was living in the apartment for like about 2 years, and also before that there was another young lady, but she's here tonight to speak about it too. But she had a lot of, how you say, I'm not gonna sewage, raw sewage, and all kind of stuff is coming into her apartment. We went to, me and Miss Corbett, Miss Beverly Corbett, we went with her to court, and I had to let her know that she had to be able to speak and also show her video of what was going on inside of her apartment. I don't think that no one should be able to be put back into that apartment until everything is being done to stop a next person to be living into that apartment until they get it done. But then, for what I'm understanding, that they got to 2016 or either 2019 in order to be doing the sewage because it's coming from the Gowanus Canal. And I'm saying that if you have to be waiting to those many years in order for something to get done, I think that NYCHA should be held accountable whether for this city to be going on. If they can go dig up the ground from someone else's building, that they can go and be digging up this and make sure that the sewage is not coming into no one else's apartment like this again. They got, every time it rains, it floods. And I'm saying they have mold that's coming up into people's apartment. We have those bathrooms that they put in. Those bathrooms, they hold a lot of mold inside the bathtubs, like the walling that they did before. And then also too, I would like, if there's someone can help this young man, he live in 3-0, but he's like special need. I'm going to put it like that. He's special need, and so is his mom. They have bed bugs a problem, okay? They cannot afford to go get beddings, whether brand new beddings or something like that. If someone can help me and guide me, or either they can tell me where to go, that I can help this family, this special family to get bedding so they can get them bed bugs out of it, because they don't feel that they have to be sleeping on the floor. So this is my concern to you, and if that you can help us. I'm just saying, I'm an advocate for the whole NYCHA complex. I'm trying to bring everybody together as a whole so that we can let y'all know what's going on, and then we can make some recommendations. And also to those cable wires. I thank Ms. Montgomery for coming out to my meeting that I had on Tuesday. I don't know what she did or what she said, but so far the cable wires is not hanging no more down over there on Wyckoff Gardens at 272, 185, and 130. They are working on them now, and I thank them. And also to Mr. Scott Springer, thank you for helping us, whether we want to reach out to everyone else.
Thank you. We'll have someone come up and speak with you. Thank you so much. Catherine Trapani, followed by Erin Feely-Nahan.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Trapani, and I'm speaking on behalf of New Destiny Housing Corporation to register our opposition to the exclusion of homeless domestic violence survivors living in specialized domestic violence shelters administered by the Human Resources Administration for the restored N0 homeless priority for NYCHA public housing as per the annual plan. New Destiny, a citywide nonprofit focused on the long-term safety and security of low-income domestic violence victims, supported the restoration of the N0 priority for homeless families in the shelter system. We joined with other advocates for homeless people confident that N0, if restored, would be available to all of the homeless, those in HRA shelters as well as in the DHS system, as has historically been the case when the priority was previously available under other administrations. We were surprised and disturbed to learn that DV survivors in the HRA shelter system had been omitted from eligibility for the N0 priority for public housing. When we questioned why, we were told that the homeless domestic violence shelter population will now be eligible for the N1 priority, which is lower than the N0, based upon a NOVA assessment instrument, a more nuanced approach which is appropriate to domestic violence that recognizes that many victims most in danger have never had contact with the criminal justice system as is currently required for the N1 priority. So while we applaud the city's decision to introduce and institute a new approach to identifying those most at risk for and therefore in need of admission to NYCHA public housing, we do not see the N1 priority as a substitute for N0. This is not an either-or choice. Denying homeless benefits to homeless domestic violence survivors is similar to denying N0 priority to homeless veterans just because they're veterans and have special needs and may have other resources. New Destiny strongly opposes the city decision to deny N0 to homeless domestic violence survivors using the homeless system created by the city and state to serve their particular needs. N0 should be available to all of the homeless, regardless of which agency administers their shelter system. Thank you very much for your consideration of our concerns.
Thank you. Erin Feely-Nahan, followed by Beverly Corbin.
Good evening. My name is Erin Feely-Nahum. I am the Executive Director of Food First Family Project, an agency incorporated in 1993 to provide services and an emergency shelter to individuals and families fleeing domestic violence. I am also the co-chair of the Housing Committee of the Coalition of Domestic Violence Residential Service Providers. Following my review of NYCHA's 2015 annual plan, I was very surprised to find that the proposed plan limits access to the N0 homeless priority designation for public housing admission preference to residents within the DHS system. This decision therefore omits HRA's domestic violence shelter residents. Historically, NYCHA has not discriminated against HRA domestic violence shelter residents, allowing residents within both systems to qualify for their homeless priority. This recent decision now places the homeless domestic violence survivors' long-term safety behind the immediate housing needs of DHS shelter residents, as well as behind those DHS families in shelter who are on the NYCHA working family wait list. HRA domestic violence shelters provide a short-term refuge for victims of abuse who lack alternative housing options. Residents who have the courage to enter HRA's shelter system do so to protect themselves and their children from abuse. They are as homeless as the families residing in DHS shelters, with several important differences. They're not permitted to stay in shelter over 180 days. They rarely acquire safe permanent housing before their time is up. And when their shelter stay ends, they're at continued risk of serious abuse. A shelter system such as ours is designed to ensure the safety of our residents with restrictive rules and regulations. Residents in our shelter are mandated to attend counseling, case management, and an array of support groups to aid them during their healing process. There is no justifiable reason why these families should be made to wait in line behind other homeless families simply because they choose to seek refuge in a shelter system designed to meet their safety and service needs. Before Bloomberg's administration discontinued the N0 homeless priority for families in shelter, HRA's domestic violence shelter residents were included alongside DHS shelter residents. The system worked well, and those who needed specialized DV shelter services designed to maximize safety were able to enter shelters, get the service they needed, and feel confident that they were making good long-term choices for their family. By eliminating the N0 priority for HRA domestic violence shelter residents, NYCHA is creating an incentive for victims to choose the DHS system, where domestic violence supportive services necessary to end the cycle of violence are not available, but permanent housing appears within reach. Providing an N1 designation does little to alleviate this concern, considering that such applicants will need to take a back seat to those in the DHS system. Recent changes made to documentation requirements for N1 priority announced on July 18, 2014 are not enough to address this inequity. A move to a domestic violence expert-administered risk assessment tool to award priority status is a positive development, but it is meaningless if this change is only applied to survivors living in shelter who will take a back seat to those in the DHS system. Sorry. The reality is that every apartment that becomes available, if the choice is between a candidate who has N0 priority and one that has an N1 priority, the N0 priority will be chosen first. Awarding N0 to all persons in shelter, whether it is within the HRA system or the DHS shelter system, is the only fair way to implement a homeless policy. We have witnessed the housing options available to domestic violence survivors within our shelter system shrink over the years. Without access to a housing subsidy or a viable priority like N0 for public housing, our residents will continue to be unable to find permanent housing during their shelter stay, whether they are employed or not, facing continued risk of abuse.
Please wrap up your comments.
We call upon NYCHA to codify these changes in their annual plan to ensure that all homeless people have meaningful access to housing and that all survivors of abuse have reasonable chance to attain a pathway to permanent housing and the safety it provides. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Corbin, followed by Tavina Willis.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Corbin, and I'm from White Court Gardens in Brooklyn. I'm way up here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm part of FURY, Families United for Racial and Economic Equality, and also Bridging the Community, Gowanus, White Corp, and Warren Street. And the first thing I would like to ask you to do is to reopen community centers. They are a mainstay for children that live in public housing. They are affordable daycare for children that live in public housing. They are educational centers for children that live in public housing. Gowanus Community Center was closed down, and they need to be reopened. Also, I would like to say to the people of public housing, we need to be spoke to, not our TA presidents, our elected officials. People need to come talk to people. The TAs are powerful representatives at times, but sometimes all TAs don't do good jobs. We need you to come and have meetings with residents, small groups of residents. I know it's hard to do, to come and sit down and talk to all residents, but that's where you get the feeling of what public housing really is like. Not somebody paid by or being very careful of what they say in public housing because they're part of a group or a class system that they have with TAs and other representatives. So I'm asking, could you please come and sit down and really talk to residents, really have resident communication, resident involvement, and open our community centers, please?
Thank you, Ms. Corbin. Tavina Willis, followed by Ruby Kitchen.
Hello, I am Tavina Willis. I am a lifelong NYCHA resident. I'm a community advocate and community organizer, and I live currently in Red Hook West. The issue I'd like to bring to the forefront is the strong digital divide that exists with public housing residents. NYCHA has implemented some initiatives that are sort of modern day, where residents can go online and register for like alerts that are going on, like where they can see messages about things going on in their buildings, such as like the electricity going out, water being shut off, in the event of an emergency, if the elevators are going to be shut down, or if we're losing power throughout the development. And there's also an emergency assistance form to identify members, the vulnerable members with health issues in NYCHA that residents can go online and submit. The issue with that is NYCHA residents all do not have access to the internet, one. Two, a lot of residents cannot afford the cable, the monopolized cable service that's only available to, like for example, I'm in Red Hook, I can only get either Time Warner or Verizon wireless services. My cable bill is about $250 a month and my rent is $272. There's no reason why I should work as hard for a utility bill as I do to pay my rent to live. And I am often left with the choice, as many, to choose between TV or rent. Now, a smart person is of course going to choose their rent. However, if I cannot afford Wi-Fi or cable, I do not have access to information to the outside world. There are residents who do not leave the home, so they need to at least know what the weather is and whether the world is going to blow up, and like simple stuff. So I'm going to ask, has NYCHA ever thought about, and before anyone says that the digital antenna is not always an option structurally to all tenants, because like I can't do it based on how high my floor is and where my building is positioned. So I'm going to suggest or ask, can NYCHA develop a way to provide their residents with some sort of free or low-cost cable, television, or digital service that we all can have access to, as well as Wi-Fi. This is now the digital age. Everybody, the agency is like, it's nice that you all are trying to get ahead of get along with the digital era and provide, access to social media and email and things like that. However, it's like a Band-Aid over a big gaping sore. Because like I said, there are thousands and probably millions of your residents who cannot even access your website, who won't be able to access this report online Why? Because they just cannot afford the services. And low-income, poor residents should not be aggressively targeted by expensive services such as Time Warner, Verizon, thereafter. There you go.
Thank you, Ms. Willis. Ruby Kitchen, followed by Barbara G. Barber.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I'm very disappointed with the turnout in here today. We should have standing room only because of the situation within New York City Housing Authority. We do not communicate with residents, and you must communicate with residents in order to get anything done. Presently, you have no respect for us. When we find out things now, it's usually by word of mouth. What happened to the personal communication we used to get? You don't respect presidents? I don't know why you have resident council presidents. I am an unpaid president. I heard the young lady say something about people being paid. I'm unpaid. Don't expect to be paid, because when I took the position, there was nothing about money. I took it out of concern. But however, I am really appalled with the way that New York City Housing Authority is going. We're going backwards instead of forward. And in order for us to correct the situation, we must go back to basics. And that's a shame that in this time and day we have to go back to basics. But I'm sorry, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to train people and stop getting people and throwing them under the train. You got to have people that come in here making these large salaries and knowing what housing is about, rather than just putting someone in a position. And a lot of us good resident council, I include myself in the good resident council, need to be approached and to give our services to the folks that don't know what's going on in the New York City Housing Authority. And it is many of us, many of those who don't know, than the ones that do know. It's all right to give your friends and your cousin, your uncle, your brother a job, but make sure they're experienced and they know something about public housing. I've been in public housing for 60 years. Oh my goodness. And I'm still in public housing. June 28, 1954, moved into public housing, same apartment, and still there. Don't intend to stay there because you're not going forward, you're going backwards. And until we can correct the situation, you're going to lose a lot of good people rather than trying to preserve good people and add on additional good people. That's what you're going to have to do. You need to really take a look at the whole total thing. And the chairman, there's no reflection on you because it was like that before you got here. I expect for you to pull us up, not to go down. So it's not a reflection on you at all. So, I mean, they blame everything on Obama. Don't be another Obama. Don't take no blame. Just stand right there. That's right. Don't be another Obama. Because the job can be done. So let us get together, work together, put somebody there that got some brains in their head, and let us work together as a team and forget about all of this nonsense stuff that's going on now.
Thank you, Ms. Kitchen. Barbara G. Barber, followed by Councilwoman Rosie Mendez.
First, let me give honor to God and not to me. And the reason why I'm saying that to you is because God's strength, this will be my last meeting with you residents. I got to move on. I want to tell you that what I need you to do, because when I finish my book, you won't be surprised. Our outstanding check cash money, and I'm going to let you find out the date, God bless Mr. Andrews, that they stole our rent, and it was millions of dollars.
And I'm quite sure if you can retrieve this money, it might be billions of dollars. And it came about because I busted rent fraud when we had tellers in our development. See these rent books? They go back to the 60s when they told me last year I didn't know where I was living for 26 years, so somebody went into my records and changed it. But God is good all the time. And we need to be told the changes before we sign our new leases, those of us who are owned by Wells Fargo and controlled by the Housing Authority. We need to know how much taxes is Wells Fargo paying back to especially upgrade Drew Hamilton. We have not had pipes in over 50 years, and right now, I bet your pipe burst. So we need to know all of this, and we're not able to locate Wells Fargo's responsibility to us as residents. I cannot speak for other people, and I guess God can change you in a few minutes, and when my daughter passed, which was my stepdaughter, and then my grandson could say, Grandma, within 2 days, over 500 people came to view her body. So that is a blessing. As former chair, Mr. Rare was able to find that hidden money that only Nick Calais would have been able to find, to hire and train under Mr. Rashid for pest control. Drew Hamilton, which is one of your Wells Fargo development, we are inundated with bed bugs, roaches, and the mice have gotten so brazen till when we go to the incinerator, they peek behind the door. Section 8 homeless, please don't make this political. When you bring them in, and I must say Mixed Finance's staff brought them in, they ignored the housing assistance. It's all right if they ignore me because I travel. There's so much I really want you to look into, and I only wish we had folks left here. We don't have that many, and I'm talking about Roland Letline, Felicia Chapman Jenkins, Lynn Shea, Emmanuel Papalicia, Laura Blackburn, Bill, and all of these folks. Okay? They understood. See, I don't need you to do anything for me because I'm self-sufficient through the Lord. And when you worry about the crazy lady at Drew Hamilton being the president, look out because you're not going to come and do what you want to do. I represent people and not cattle, as we were told by a former manager. Okay? And when we talk about you giving us respect, we must also give you respect. You see, and don't come to forums talking about we need to go back. Housing Authority is sinking like this now.
Thank
and
you,
only
Ms.
the
Barber.
grace of God will bring us out.
Thank you, Ms. Barber.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rosie Mendez, followed by Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosie Mendez, and I am the councilwoman for District 2. Thank you. A district that includes 17 developments and over 10,000 units of public housing. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am a strong advocate for NYCHA and a proud former resident who resided in Williamsburg houses for 24 years. I care passionately about NYCHA's long-term viability as this city's major affordable housing resource. As a former resident and tenant organizer, I understand the importance of the annual plan and value the opportunity to make comments about its provisions. It is for this reason that I was troubled that this year, for the first time in nearly 20 years, NYCHA chose not to do evening hearings and only had afternoon hearings, except for the Borough of Brooklyn. Hearings from 3 to 5 do not allow an opportunity for true resident engagement, and many residents work or are picking up their children from school. It makes it difficult for them to attend afternoon hearings. On June 3rd, prior to the first borough hearing in the Bronx, I requested that NYCHA institute evening hearings. That request went unanswered until June 28th. And then Mr. Honan informed me that the hearing on Monday the 30th will be extended hours. That information didn't go out to anyone. It only went out through Twitter, and it went out only after Mr. Honan and I had that conversation on June 28th. My written testimony goes into more details about my concerns about the rental assistance demonstration program and the moving to work program. So I would like for you to read my testimony in detail. I added things in my written testimony today that I didn't say in my last hearing, in the Manhattan hearing, that I want to revisit a couple of issues that I've talked about in previous annual plans hearings, and that is my long-standing concern about significant amendments and NYCHA's payments to the city, including payments to the NYPD. At a city council hearing back in 2009 on the topic of the annual plan, I urged NYCHA to include specific wording defining what actually constitutes a significant amendment to the annual plan. And in your 2011 draft annual plan, you state that a significant amendment is comprised of any change as a result of federal law or, quote, any event that the authority determines to be a significant amendment, end quote. And I restate that that is not enough. The breadth of discretion is too big. Oftentimes, I have found that NYCHA considers a change not to be significant, yet it has a major impact on residents, on their lives, and on their tenancy. So I urge the authority to deem any change that could potentially affect residents' tenancy a significant amendment, and it would require a review period and a public hearing, which I think we're entitled to. This would include, very importantly, proposed demolition and disposition plans, which to this date have not been considered significant amendment. Second, I urge for the permanent elimination of the Memoranda of Understanding between NYCHA and the New York City Police Department. While I am grateful that Mayor de Blasio has eliminated partial payment in fiscal year 2014 and full payment for fiscal year 2015, the fact that this MOU is not permanently eliminated does not allow you, NYCHA, to put forth a long-term plan for the use of that funding. Additionally, NYCHA pays $23 million in payments in lieu of taxes. If these are permanently eliminated, that would bring an additional $121 million to you to use. And I also want to bring to the attention of the board that back in 2011, HUD ruled that NYPD must comply with Section 3 requirements because of that MOU. Years ago, I asked for an update on this issue and how the NYPD would comply, and we've never received an answer. And I want to lastly commend the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing for once again compiling a very comprehensive and thoughtful response on the annual plan. Thank you. Please note that I fully support the response submitted by the Alliance and that I am one of the many participants listed as a member of the Alliance. I look forward to collaborating with NYCHA in implementing an annual plan that incorporates suggestions made at this public hearing today. Thank you once again for the opportunity to testify. And welcome to all the new members of the board, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, followed by Judith Cahan.
Thank you very much. I am Gail Brewer, the Manhattan Borough President, and I am delighted to be here. I was in the council for 12 years and testified at every hearing, and I know it's a lot of work that NYCHA puts into this, and the Alliance. A special shout out to Victor Gonzalez, who is a member of the Upper West Side and has been doing this for a long time on the board. And I want to thank you, Madam Chair, because you did a lot of outreach when you came in to our office and others, and it makes a big difference, and your staff has continued to do that. I just want to say, as Manhattan Borough President, something that you might not know, which I'm proud of. We recently put Polly Spain, who's a tenant leader, on Board 7, but then we realized on the 12 community boards in Manhattan, there are 18 members of NYCHA who are on community boards, and I think we should be very proud of that and look toward them for some of the issues that are relevant to the residents and to NYCHA. They do a great job. I want to pick up on some of the amazing work that Councilmember Mendez did and others, some of your previous speaker. First of all, we all want to applaud NYCHA's amendment to modify its tenant selection eligibility, but I want to pick up on what the first two speakers talked about regarding the need to prioritize the domestic violence victims to the highest TO level. And also, as you think about how to make sure that some of the 50,000 individuals and children in the homeless shelter, I know the mayor has talked about prioritizing 750 homeless families. We obviously think more should reach the top level, but I know you will also need a lot of support for those families. Make sure that that is included. The other issue I know is the flat rent policy. Under this policy, per federal guidelines, NYCHA residents who are paying less than 30% of their household income and less than 80% of fair market rent on their units will see their rents increase. So I urge NYCHA to clearly communicate what this policy is with those expected to be impacted by this policy. So it's back to the issue of how do you communicate. I know that second, one of the biggest issues we all have is the issue of safety. Chief Gomez and the mayor did a wonderful job recently talking about how you are going to move funding to 15 particular developments, 3 in Manhattan. And I mention this because I think that what you also need to do, as Councilmember Mendez indicate, is not only make the money that was going to the police department permanent at NYCHA, but move the pilot over and move over the money that was to go to sanitation. It's $2 million for the Department of Sanitation and $29 million for the annual pilot program, now going to the general fund that I think should remain at NYCHA. Regarding repairs and maintenance, very quickly, I know that people call CCC and all the issues that go with it. Whether you switch to 311 as a recommendation or stay with CCC, what's not there is transparency. If you go to 311, you know where your complaint is. Is it at DEP? Who's dealing with it? At CCC, you have absolutely no idea whatsoever. So you need to have transparency at CCC regarding that issue. Regarding the rental assistance demonstration and certainly the moving to work, we have lots of discussion here in my testimony. I'm sure it follows what the Alliance and Councilmember Mendez stated. I also want to mention regarding the landfill, I'm very pleased at what the mayor did in terms of saying no to the EULA proposals that were proposed by the Bloomberg administration, start all over, involve the residents, and we look forward to perhaps working with the residents and you on senior housing. We need more senior housing, and that's something that could be prioritized. Sustainability is another issue. Some work has been done. The Borough President's Office has 50 citizens, part of the Solid Waste Advisory Board. We look forward to working with you on that. Section 3 was mentioned. I think that's one of the issues that has not been dealt with in the past, and we look forward to working with you on Section 3. NYCHA also should be connecting with companies that are at least 51% or more Section 3 resident-owned, in addition to making sure that companies that do business with NYCHA have Section 3. And of course, the most important is resident engagement. I've been in a lot of, had the opportunity to swear in a lot of resident engagement situations. Been very proud to do that, but we need newsletters, we need communication, digital divide needs to be addressed. There are many ways to do it. I look forward to doing it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. Judith Cahan, followed by Mary William.
I could hold it. Hi. My name is Judith Cahan. I am the co-chair of the New York City Coalition of Domestic Violence Residential Providers. We are deeply concerned by NYCHA's decision to admit HRA, is that okay? Yeah. Okay. HRA domestic violence shelter residents from the N0 priority designation for a public housing admission preference in their annual plan. This plan places homeless domestic violence survivors' long-term safety needs behind the housing needs of DHS shelter residents. HOA domestic violence shelters provide a short-term safe haven for victims of abuse who lack safe alternative housing options. Families using HOA DV shelters have made themselves homeless in trying to protect themselves and their children. They are just as homeless as those residing in DHA shelters, with an important difference. Domestic violence survivors are not permitted to stay in shelters beyond 180 days, in which time-appropriate housing may not have been identified. When their shelter stay end, they are at continued risk of serious abuse if they have not found permanent housing. There is no justifiable reason why these families should be made to wait in line behind other homeless families simply because they choose to seek refuge in a shelter system designed to meet their safety and service needs. Historically, when N0 homeless priority has been available, HOA domestic violence shelters residents have been included. The system worked well, and those who needed specialized DV shelter services designed to maximize safety were able to enter shelters, get the services they need, and feel confident they were making good long-term choices for their families. The homeless system is not designed to meet survivors' needs for counseling and other special supports. Failure to include meaningful access to housing for HOA shelter residents should create a positive incentive to choose the DHS shelter system, for fear that entering DV shelters would mean certain long-term homelessness. The N0 priority should be available to all homeless persons, regardless of which system they are forced to temporarily call home. Recent changes made to documentation requirements for the N1 priority are not enough to address this inequity. On July 18, 2014, it was announced that persons living in HOA domestic violence shelters can qualify for an N1 priority status if their shelter worker completed a NOVA assessment form in lieu of the otherwise stringent criminal justice-based documentation currently required by NYCHA. A move to a domestic violence expert-administered risk assessment tool to award priority status is a positive development, but it is meaningless if the change is only applied to survivors living in shelters, who will take a back seat to those in the DHS shelter system receiving an N0 priority. Awarding N0 to all persons in shelter is the only fair way to implement a homeless priority. However,
Ms. Kahan, I
yes.
have your testimony. You're 43 seconds over your 3-minute time limit.
Okay.
And I have to, based on the number of speaker slips that I have, in order for us to hear from everyone, I'll have to ask that everyone adhere to the 3-minute rule.
Okay.
So I do have your testimony, and I
you've
thank you.
distributed it to all the members of the board?
I will make certain that everyone receives it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary William, followed by Madeline Innocent.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mary Williams. I'm from Wall Street Housing. That's where I were before at 572. I'm speaking about the flooding, the feces and everything that was in that apartment 1O on the first floor. I dare the housing to say, you turn around and you take a tenant out and make me safe, but then you bring another family in there with babies, and they had the flooding just as bad as I had it, all over the floor. When I was there, it came through the bathroom, through the bedrooms, down the hall, the living room, the kitchen, up under the sink, up under the stove, the refrigerator. I had to get tenants to run downstairs, and they saw that I was crying and trying to be safe, to take my things out of the apartment so it doesn't get any damage that it was. So they were there to help me. But in housing, you weren't there in order to help the tenant that you recently put back into the apartment. You rented the apartment out of gain. You should have not rented that apartment. That's a family. Those are babies. Anything they touch, babies put it in their mouths, and you have feces all over that apartment. That's the wrong thing to do to a family. You said you love NYCHA. When you love NYCHA, you love the tenants as well. When there's a problem, we all come together. We're not perfect. You're not perfect either, but we ask you to come and help when trouble is there. And the trouble is there when an apartment is all messed up with feces all over the place, all over every part of that house. Not one room was missing. And for a mom to come back in there with little children, that doesn't look good on NYCHA to let that happen, and you turn around and put a family back into that apartment. That should have not been done. It should have been taken care of. Also, in the tenant association room in 572, you still have feces coming in there. There's fuzz. Whenever the weather is bad, it's there. When it's not even bad, it's there. It does not have to rain in order to have feces come all over the house. I express that because this is dangerous and a bad situation to put a family into. Madam Chair, I thank you so much saying that you want to be there to keep us safe. You can keep us safe, but you have to get to the rest of the staff that allow that to happen. You're going to be there, and I do have confidence in you that you will take care of the problem, that not let another family come in there in order to suffer that way. A family that was in there the last time, she decided not to come tonight because it was too much for her. But I stand beside her and let her know we are there. Every tenant here, everyone that's in this building, united we stand, divided we fall. We cannot hear me. We cannot be divided. If we are, then nothing will get done. So we ask your help, and we ask you, and thank you very much for being there and listening. That was a pain for me to go through that. And there's an even more pain for a baby 2 years old to go through that in housing. Please make sure they do not rent that apartment out until it's actually taken care of. I thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Madeline Innocent, followed by Councilmember Margaret Chin.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Madeline Innocent, and I'm a longtime resident of Douglas Houses. I am a member of Community Voices Heard, otherwise known as CVH, and a member of Community Board 7. But I am testifying on my own behalf and for all the voiceless people in Douglas Houses who don't have the knowledge or opportunity to speak for themselves. I would like to thank Chairwoman Shola
Olatoye.
I apologize. For meeting with me and CVH members to talk about ways to improve relationship between the residents and NYCHA and to help with rebuilding NYCHA in the future. We as NYCHA residents want to be included in the rebuilding process. With transparency and respect, we can work side by side and build a community where people can feel pride about the place where they live. I very much like your ideas for the future of NYCHA. For example, housing for seniors, your ongoing efforts to reduce backlog and badly needed repairs. Your help with updating our resident associations, we can assist with the day-to-day issues residents face with NYCHA and the advancement of improvement relationships between the residents and NYCHA. Your new energy put into the remediation of mold to improve the health and well-being of our residents. Also making emergency staff available to residents at all times to assist with their emergencies. Establishing a dialogue with residents and actually hearing what their needs are living in public housing. Educating the residents about how NYCHA operates in form of training programs for the resident and association board members. I personally hope that you will continue to visit our community and hear our concerns because we are in desperate need of your help. Our concerns are similar to other NYCHA communities such as reduction in crime, downsizing, insufficient numbers of smaller and ADA compliant apartments for seniors and the disabled, elevator maintenance, and increased accessibility for the disabled and elderly to the elevators and entrances. The list of possible improvements to Douglas houses would take much more time than we have here today, but I am confident that we will be able to work with you and your staff to build both trust and facility improvements we all need in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Innocent. Councilmember Margaret Chin, followed by Khadijah Chowdhury.
Good evening, and I wanted to welcome our new chairwoman, and it was really a pleasure meeting with you, and welcome to all the new board member. And thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Margaret Chin. I represent District 1 in Lower Manhattan, and you're in my district right now. But I also represent close to 10,000 NYCHA residents that are living in some of the really wonderful historic development in Lower Manhattan, like Smith Houses, LaGuardia, Rutgers, Two Bridges, Lower East Side 1, Gompers, Seward Park Extension, and these are the truly affordable housing that we have in the city. Ever since I took office in 2010, I've been a member of the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, which is a coalition of housing advocates and elected officials who strive to protect public housing and its residents. And this year, I stand with them again and support the position paper that they are submitting to you. It is crucial that we take this opportunity to secure a strong and sustainable affordable housing stock in New York City. Last year, in NYCHA's attempt to seek other means for increasing revenue, they put forward the famous, infill land lease plan that revealed many challenges faced by both the community and housing authority in addressing the severe impacts of economic shortfall. Along with my council colleague last year, we supported 2 resolutions calling on NYCHA to go through the ULURP process for any proposed disposition of its land or building. Both of those resolutions were passed unanimously. In addition, the council urged NYCHA to follow a thorough and transparent process that would include resident engagement, effective communication, and open community review. Regarding any potential plans for the use of NYCHA land for redevelopment, I implore NYCHA to continue work with elected officials, local stakeholders, and residents on a meaningful community engagement process. Any residential development must take into account the critical need for affordable housing in this city. And as chair of the City Council on the Committee on Aging, I believe that senior housing opportunity should be given a priority in any such process. This would also help to reduce the number of under-occupied NYCHA apartments and would provide space for larger families on the waiting list. Also, regarding any future development, I think it must be noted that the preservation of NYCHA housing is not currently mentioned as part of the mayor's 10-year plan to create or preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing. Right now, only the potential use of NYCHA land is included in the 10-year plan. I strongly believe that if we're ever going to consider the use of NYCHA land, we must equally consider what is necessary to preserve every single unit of public housing. We must remember that these units are, in fact, our only true public housing in the city. The financial issues surrounding NYCHA stem from inadequate federal funding and growing expenses to maintain the aging infrastructure of public housing buildings. We all recognize that the resulting budget deficits had created tremendous challenges, but NYCHA tenants have carried the burden of those economic blows for too long. Following federal budget cuts, Section 8 voucher continue to be at stake. Furthermore, a lack of much-needed building repairs remains a top priority for NYCHA residents living in my district. While Mayor Bloomberg had taken a great step forward by relieving NYCHA of a $70 million payment to NYPD this year, we will continue to call on the mayor to terminate this MOU and make this permanent, and also get rid of the other so-called special services payment by NYCHA. Together with these funds, more than $100 million, that would be best used to support both the operating and capital needs for NYCHA. My constituents are suffering from the impact of these budget cuts. One example has been the many years of multiple gas outages in Smith Houses on the Lower East Side. Now, NYCHA is finally moving forward with the replacement of those aging gas pipes, and I thank you for those efforts, but we should not have to wait so long, or to wait for a tragedy to occur or living condition to crumble before repairs are made. As one of the largest landlords in the country, NYCHA is responsible for ensuring that quality living condition for its tenants and for proactively finding ways to use public assets to support its capital improvement needs. As noted in my past testimonies, I have also stressed that NYCHA's moving to work and rental assistance demonstration proposal must include public hearings before NYCHA make any effort to seek funding flexibility. Such proposals should ensure in writing that public housing remains public. I also believe that NYCHA should ensure that all future public hearings are as accessible as possible to all NYCHA residents, regardless of their age, mobility, or whatever languages they speak. That means holding hearings in the evening rather than early in the day, so residents who work during the day have the opportunity to participate. That also means making sure that translators are always available to help communicate with any resident who do not speak English. And I hope that these recommendations for the draft fiscal year 2015 annual plan, that you take these into consideration, and I look forward to having a great working relationship with you. Because ultimately what I said is that NYCHA public housing is the true public housing in the city, and I thank you for your work, and I look forward to really working with you, our new chairwoman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Member. Kwazia Chaudhry,
yes,
and followed by Jeffrey L. Flowers.
Good evening. My name is Kutsia Chaudhry. I'm a program director at Food First Family Project. I'm here to represent, I'm a voice of all those victims of domestic violence who we are served and promise to serve very well. Those people who are not in the shelter by choice, we are the one who made them that encouragement to come. We're going to give you a safe place to live, abuse-free life over there. When they are coming with the children, we are providing the services, making them put together. They are with a low self-esteem, nothing. Think about, they lack everything, house, relationship, property, every single thing. When they are over there, they have a main concern about housing. Where they're gonna go? I have a resident, she was in the process of discharge, and 5 years old little boy, he pulled the mom back and he said, Mom, where we are going now? You say you're gonna get your own room where I can play, sleep, do homework, where we gonna go now? No place to go. It broke my heart that where this woman gonna go now? We were the one who was promising them to come. I'm requesting that NYCHA priority for them. At least they can spend abuse-free life over there. They can focus on their children. Someone said, give me a good mother, I will give you a good nation. How mother can give that good nation when she doesn't have place to stay? No safe place to live. She's in a more abusive situation. Over there was one abuser, and now here, multiple abuser. No roof, no food, nothing, anything. I'm here for those families. I'm requesting a safe place, that roof. At least they can sit together, they can focus on their children, they can give you a community that you guys wanted, everyone wanted. So how we can ignore this? How we can forget this? They are victims, they need safety. They need safety. How can they be safe if they're not gonna get that roof, that apartment? I'm requesting, please think about priority for them who are in danger, with the little children, no place to go, with a low self-esteem. They cannot represent themselves. They don't have that order of protection because they were scared. They don't have those police reports because they were unable to do that. Don't put all those things on them so that they cannot live a life. They need all those safe places. They need a life. Please, I'm begging you guys to think about it and give that safe haven to all victims of domestic violence, that they deserve to live that abuse-free, safe life for them, for their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chaudhry. Jeffrey L. Flowers, followed by Mrs. Brown.
Madam Chair and the Board, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for a minute. First of all, my name is Jeffrey Flowers, and I'm from the Farragut community, and I must say all power, all glory, and all honor belongs to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I just have 3 points. I'm not going to take up much of your time. We would like for the board to use the churches to help with Section 3, which has never worked effectively enough. Also, we would like to know in the Farragut community, how is the new housing program going to include more than 160,000 residents on the waiting list? And if it's based on affordable income, how is that determined? Also, my biggest plea to this board is a call for the modification of the relocation policy, which threatens our seniors and intimidates them. We need exemptions based on a case-by-case review of seniors over 65 who have been living in public housing for over 30 years. Now, I'm also a deacon at the Church of the Open Door, and I'm the advocate for them. And a lot of my seniors come and complain about their being harassed to be put out. Where are they going? I have one that has a husband that's in a wheelchair. Where can she go? Please take that into consideration. Review that policy again on the relocation for our seniors. Amen?
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mrs. Brown, followed by Lionel Babala.
Yes, my name is Mrs. Brown. I'm Section 8 and the president of my Tenants Association, Manhattan South. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to fully comment on this annual plan and the issues which are of critical concern to families in public and assisted housing. I read the plan from beginning to end, and I made my suggestions, asked my questions, and submitted them, but there were a couple of things I'd like to address first. Technical assistance should be provided to all developments, tenant organizations, in order for all residents to interpret the annual plan, capital construction, executive summary, MTW, Section 3, resident-owned businesses, etc. This assistance would allow the residents at different levels to understand this complicated legal document. Staff could provide this technical assistance within a 40-hour work week by using flex time. For example, should a NYCHA employee have to conduct a training or evening meeting at 6 p.m., the NYCHA employee would start his or her day at 11 a.m. to avoid overtime. Now, I want to address the RAD issue, and I just summarized it for you. Now, should HUD decide to go forward with NYCHA to participate in RAD, NYCHA would be entitled to convert about 4,000 units, and this is always changing. RAD begins its second round of application process, which has been extended to September 2014. Should NYCHA decide to participate in RAD, we ask that you involve its stakeholders, residents, by including them in the preliminary process through committee and by notify residents and resident organizations of proposed units, developments, conduct the required 2 meetings to discuss conversion plans, written responses to our comments regarding proposed conversion. Now, listed below are tenants' concerns should NYCHA go forward with RAD are: does Section 18 go away if RAD is approved? The law that funding received would be at fiscal year 2012 levels. How would this fit into the FMR schedule? If NYCHA goes forward, submit pro forma and letter of interest, HUD approves within 30 days, and then NYCHA is later advised by the funding lending agency that the loan was not approved and NYCHA does not have a strong financial plan, what happens? What happens with TPA monies after the conversion? Section 8 does not receive any TPA monies. $10 is suggested after the RAD. What would be the contingency plan to keep these units occupied, or do the residents become homeless? Are you going to offer vouchers to the residents? What happens to the residents after the conversion is completed? Under HR 21112, public housing goes away as we know it in 2015, and the conversion for PBV or PBVR is a reality. Residents need to understand what NYCHA's plan is going to be so that all residents understand and are prepared. All developments should have a legitimate tenant organization and the term limits should be enforced. At each development, the resident should have access to a computer and technical assistance for training. Section 3, resident-owned businesses should be encouraged. Green jobs, turnkey operations, subcontracting, landscaping, catering, etc., and a real commitment from the unions to provide training, apprenticeships, and follow-through licensure for each trade. And the last thing I want to ask, what are we doing about the vets? They should have a priority. In addition to that, we have veterans who are returning from Iraq and Afghanistan who are homeless. And I don't hear anybody addressing the veteran situation. And that should be at the top of our priority list. And I ask
Mrs. Brown. I can accept your comments. Would you like us to? Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for your comments. Lionel Babula, followed by Shireen Long.
Thank you very much, and good evening. My main question to NYCHA is, why should homeless people have priority for housing over victims of domestic violence? And me speaking as a male victim of domestic violence, which this is even more new to me, and it seems less common because many males are afraid to come forward and speak. I want to know why it is not equal between homeless and domestic violence victims. Domestic violence victims are also homeless, and many of us are put in this situation not by choice, but by victims of circumstances. We live in fear and we need stability. As the right as humans, we should also feel like we're safe. To be homeless, you just have to be homeless, and you can get N0 priority. But to be a victim of domestic violence and to qualify for even a secondary status of N1, you need at least 2 police reports, which means you need to at least have gone through multiple repeats of abuse, and living in fear before you could finally even be considered less than N4 status.
Thank you. Shireen, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Sorry, I just had to catch myself.
My apologies.
All right. So for us to even have any priority at all, we need to suffer abuse repeatedly just to be considered for housing. Somebody hurt us. They took away our sense of safety and replaced it with fear. So domestic violence victims deserve first priority for housing. We need a place to call home, just like everybody else. And we need a permanent place that is safe for us and our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shireen Long, followed by Maya Curian.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here to thank Food First family to accommodate me and my children. We are victims of domestic violence, and I just want to know, after we leave the home, where do we go? We need a safe place to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Maya Curian, followed by Cindy Coulter.
Good evening. My name is Maya Curian, and I'm here today on behalf of New York State Senator Brad Hoylman, who represents 10 developments in Manhattan and thousands of Section 8 tenants. I'll keep it short because we don't want to take any time away from the families who've come here to testify tonight, but the senator just wanted to openly express support for all the positions expressed in the position paper written by the Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, and also wanted to highlight that he submitted his own testimony tonight. The testimony goes into further detail. There are copies available at the front, and he really hopes that the board takes them into consideration. 2 of his main concerns are the possibility of some sort of development moving forward on NYCHA land. If that happens, he wants to express strong support that community engagement be a priority from the beginning. That has not happened in the past with the infill plan, and it is absolutely essential that it happens moving forward. The second thing, which has been touched on, is maintenance and code enforcement. As many of you know, I think once again, it's been touched on, but transparency is a big, big problem. The other problem is that because it's not because tenants cannot use the 311 system to make repairs, a lot of the times those fall by the wayside, and they can't get the services that they so desperately need. The senator had actually written a letter to NYCHA and the city last year about it, and that went unanswered. So he'd like to request that be taken into consideration amongst the other positions expressed by the Alliance and in his testimony, but he would like for that to be taken into consideration in the final annual plan. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. Curian. Cindy Coulter, followed by Denise Aries.
Hello. Thank you, NYCHA committee members, for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Cindy Coulter, and I'm the Vice President for Safe Horizons Domestic Violence Shelter Program. Safe Horizon is the nation's leading victim assistance organization and New York City's largest provider of services to victims of crime and abuse. We operate 8 shelters with 725 beds, and we serve about 3,000 families, adults and children a year in our shelters. Safe Horizon is also a long-standing partner with NYCHA, works closely with the agency to operate the emergency transfer program that helps vulnerable NYCHA residents into safer settings. We also work with the police services area to bolster New York PD's response to victims of domestic violence and other crimes. Today, I'd like to address 2 issues. I will begin by sharing our concern about the potential shift in the city's homeless shelter policy regarding the N0 priority. Safe Horizon appreciates NYCHA's proposal that we create more flexible criteria for domestic violence survivors in our shelters to qualify for N1. In particular, we thank the authority for the criminal justice documents alone. We know that our documents alone are not enough, don't reflect many clients' experience with domestic violence. We also appreciate that NYCHA recognizes that victims who make the decision to flee their homes and go into a domestic violence shelter are often faced with high levels of risk. This is a positive step in the right direction, and we commend NYCHA for adopting the policy shift. However, we are deeply concerned with the proposal to make residents of the general homeless shelter system N0, while residents of domestic violence shelters would have the lower N1 priority status. Residents of domestic violence emergency shelters face strict time limits on their residency, and that residents of general homeless shelters do not face, causing them to make difficult choices for themselves and their children. We ask that NYCHA create a more equitable path to housing where homeless families are seen in an equal light and get equal services. In addition, I just want to bring up very briefly that we would like more flexibility around the criteria for victims so that there's no need for them to bring in police reports and other documentation in order for them to get higher priority status. So just to conclude, we would ask that NYCHA both establish less rigid criteria that will allow domestic violence victims who are not in domestic violence shelters to more easily obtain N1 priority status, and we urge the authority to reconsider their proposal so that we can ensure a more equitable path to housing for all homeless families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coulter. Denise Aviles, followed by Marilyn De Jesus. Ms. Aviles? Are you Ms. De Jesus?
De Jesus, yes.
Okay.
My name is
Please.
Cecilia Gaston. I'm the Executive Director of the Violence Intervention Program, and I'm here at the request of one of our residents in the emergency shelter. My name is Marilyn De Jesus. I have been waiting for a NYCHA apartment since 2001. I was 3 years in shelter with my daughter to no avail. She is now with her dad. Now I have a domestic violence problem, and I'm still waiting for help. What they have done now is starting me all over again. It is unfair to me. It is unfair to my daughter too. Because of the situation, I have depression now. I need help now, not next year. I have been waiting long enough, and I have proof. Not only am I a victim of domestic violence, I am now a victim of NYCHA.
Thank you for your comment. Helene Poitier, I may be mispronouncing that, from Food First Family Project, followed by Cindy Lowe. Ms. Poitier, Ms. Cindy Lowe. Ms. Lowe is followed by Gloria Collins.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Lowe. I'm a program manager for the Violence Intervention Program's Emergency Safe Dwelling for survivors of domestic violence. Tonight I would like to read a brief statement prepared by one of our shelter residents who unfortunately was not able to be here tonight in person, and this is regarding the N0 and N1 priority categories. Hello, my name is Raquel, and I was unable to attend today's hearing because my child is sick. But hopefully my not being able to stand today in front of you will not make my voice unheard. I am a domestic violence survivor, and when I heard what was going on, I was speechless. I do not understand why a domestic violence woman cannot be just as equal as a DHS working family if we provide the documents that are needed. DV women are 1/3 of the homeless people needing of help with permanent housing. Pushing us aside will only increase the amount of homeless mothers and children. I am under the understanding that when our stay at a DV shelter is ended, we will be sent to PATH and can be categorized as a DHS person. But what is wrong with that is that we, the women who have experienced DV, have safe zones and unsafe zones. So therefore, we will or might wait even longer due to the setback. So therefore, I stand today and ask you to take consideration in categorizing us equal with DHS with proper documentation that is needed. I'm not asking to put us above, just the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria Collins, followed by Erica Overton.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am a resident of Ingersoll in Brooklyn. I've been a resident for over 50-some years. My concern, although I am sympathetic to the shelter and domestic violence individuals who don't have a place or who are waiting, I must say, unfortunately, when they apply for it, they are giving, our development has complied to the request of filling apartments with domestic and shelter. In my building alone, there are 6 families have been placed. Unfortunately, the pamphlet that NYCHA provides with the rules and guidelines that they're supposed to abide by, once they sign that line and get that apartment, then we see that it was fraudulent. The domestic women that come in with children, they come in with the same person who whipped them down to get in the program. Secondly, the shelter, we have a family that appreciate where they now live, okay? There's a big difference of getting a shelter and appreciate it and then come and destroy where you live. My concern is that at the admission policy of NYCHA of who's screening these individuals and what follow-up comes behind that once they are allowed to get in. Because right today, we had to make a police report where a resident got hit in the head by a full bottle by one of the individuals who came in as a domestic problem who has no control of her children. We were told you have to go to the police department to make a complaint in order for NYCHA to see that this tenant is a risk. She's only been in the building for 8 months. She has 5 children, and the same person that she says beat her to death is living with her. There is a problem. I'm compassionate for the homeless. I'm compassionate for violence, but I will not let individuals blame NYCHA for people's responsibility that they're supposed to take upon themselves too, to secure their families. I think it's unfair. Last but not least, I'm concerned about the monies that should be released to our porters and our superintendents to enable them to get the job done. Some of our developments don't have even enough bags. They're distributed 3 bags per person. and I would appreciate if you could release the funds so they could get the job done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Erica Overton, followed by Aixa Torres. Did I miss one?
What's her name? What's her name?
Can you advise of your name, please, at this mic?
Haylin Patel.
Okay. Please proceed, Ms. Patel.
In terms of victims of domestic violence,
Buenas noches.
good night.
Yo soy de víctima de violencia doméstica.
I'm a victim of domestic violence.
Yo vengo aquí para, no por mí, sino que por todos.
I'm coming here not only to speak for myself, but to speak for everyone.
Nosotros creo que de víctima de violencia doméstica,
I believe that us, as victims of domestic violence,
tenemos que ser prioridad.
we have to be a priority.
En mi caso yo no soy prioridad,
I am not a priority
porque los 3 reportes de víctima de violencia doméstica no son válidos.
because the 3 reports of victim of domestic violence are not valid.
No sé qué más quieren si esperar que el papá de mi hija una cuarta vez llama a la policía para que él me mate a mi hija, para que ustedes puedan darme un buen lugar seguro para mi hija y para mí.
I don't know what else do you want. I don't know if what you're expecting is that the father of my daughter, that I have to call the police again because he does something else, something that could potentially get my daughter killed or get myself killed, so that I can have the chance to live in a place that's secure.
Creo que todos necesitamos de víctimas de violencia ayuda, sea hombre o sea mujer. Necesitamos un lugar seguro por nuestros hijos. Si yo fuera sola, yo no estuviera aquí, pero es por mi hija.
I believe that all of us, victims of domestic violence, men and women, we deserve a safe place to live. If I was by myself, I wouldn't be coming here on my own behalf. I'm coming here on behalf of my daughter.
Muchas gracias por escucharme.
Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you. Erica Overton, followed by Aixa Torres.
Hi, my name is Erica Overton. I am the community liaison for Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. I won't get through her whole testimony, but it is outside on the tables. So here it goes. I am Assemblymember Linda B. Rosenthal, and I represent the Upper West Side and parts of Clinton Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on NYCHA's draft annual plan. As a member of the New York State Assembly's Committee on Housing and an elected official who represents thousands of tenants in 3 NYCHA developments in my district, Amsterdam Houses, Amsterdam Addition, and Harborview Terrace, it is my hope that under this new administration, NYCHA will finally be able to accomplish the much-needed reforms for which advocates and elected officials like me have called for over the past decade. NYCHA faces an annual operating deficit of $77 million and an astonishing $7 billion capital improvement backlog to repair deteriorating buildings and aging infrastructure. As a result of these fiscal pressures, as well as lingering administrative inefficiencies, NYCHA residents grapple with extensive waits for repairs and abysmal living conditions. While NYCHA reports that it has reduced its outsized repair backlog, trimming the number of work orders from 274,000 to 78,000, and cutting the average service time from 108 to 4 days, residents continue to face obstacles getting repairs done. While I am pleased that the New York City Police Department will provide a partial rebate of $52 million to NYCHA of the nearly $70 million that NYCHA paid under an MOU for police services at NYCHA developments, the MOU should be terminated altogether. In addition, NYCHA must work with the community, with the city to address the to address the other outstanding MOUs, requiring it to pay $29 million annually in payments in lieu of taxes and $1 million annually to the New York City Department of Sanitation for special pickup services. NYCHA residents already pay for these services via their taxes, and by eliminating the $30.6 million annual subsidy to the City of New York, NYCHA will be better positioned to achieve fiscal solvency. NYCHA must also include in its annual plan an estimate of the projected operating deficit, the means by which the deficit will be closed, and the continuing impact of the dire predicament. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Overton. Aixa Torres, followed by Nancy Ortiz.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, New York City Housing Authority staff, fellow residents. Today, on behalf of the Alfred E. Smith residents and NYCHA residents of Lower East Side, which to address the issue of the rent increases. The problem with the rent increases that people who project or make the law do not understand that the increases taking place for residents are creating a rent delinquency not seen before. The reason being that this rule was made to address families with six figures incomes, $100,000 to $250,000. However, the residents below these income brackets are the ones being affected with the increases of $100 or more in 1 year. Any major rent increases should be phased in over at least 2 years and based on net income. The problem is that basing FMR on the New York City neighborhood rents is a problem because New York City rents are inflated. This system needs to be revisited and addressed. The actual rent being paid by residents is more than 30% of their gross instead. The formula is not allowing for higher cost of living in New York City. Residents may be able to pay their rent. Residents are not able to pay their rent with one paycheck of their net pay. Today, that is not the case. Residents need to implement NYCHA needs to implement ceiling rents again for the apartments. Families cannot afford to pay rents at this level when their net income are not at the same level. We recommend to NYCHA, resident leaders, and elected officials and CBOs, an AHOC committee be delegated to review this problem for remedies and actions. And also, we are in support. As resident association president, I signed off for my residents to the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing and their position paper on this NYCHA plan. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Nancy Ortiz, followed by Robert Zabler.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and everyone present for taking the time to attend this hearing this evening. My name is Nancy Ortiz. I am the Resident Association leader of Atlantic Houses, 1,773 families with a population of 3,096. There are three issues that I would like to bring forth. Downsizing. The priority of these families who were forced to submit their downsizing applications based on the policy that NYCHA instituted have been awaiting for their proper size apartments. However, they are encased and held hostage in their current size apartment, paying a higher rent, which is unfair if they followed the procedure and protocol and are waiting for the right size apartment because they volunteered to downsize. This issue really needs to be addressed, it needs to be looked into, and it needs to be reevaluated on how to properly bring people to the right size apartments, especially those who want to downsize. Secondly, can you please review your table of organization and your manning formulas? There are numerous duplicated departments and duplicated titles. Once again, the residents are paying the burden of these mismanagements of staff and duplication of departments and titles. Lastly, since 2005, rents were increased, surcharges were implemented, funding from state and city, the newly waiver of payments to the city. This amounts to millions of dollars in revenue, yet we still believe that NYCHA is still continuously mismanaging these funds because we're still in the red. However, we have all of this money coming in, but we're still in the red. There's a problem. Something is wrong here. The scales are not balancing. And again, the residents are paying the burden because we are the ones that have to wait for the backlogs. We're the ones that our rents keep going up, but the services keep going down. That's a problem. Again, this is something that, once again, it really needs to be reevaluated. Something is not right here. Lastly, I, Nancy Ortiz, in favor of the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing paper, on behalf of Vladic Houses, the board, and the 1,773 families we support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Robert Zabler, followed by James Rodriguez.
Hello. My name is Robert Zabler. I am speaking on behalf of the New York voters, residents, and taxpayers. I submitted in writing our demand that NYCHA looks into corruption and abuse of power and misuse of money and so forth. I mean, that is addressed not just to the board, but to everybody who works for NYCHA, also the contractors and people who are incompetent, who cannot do the right job. It's not your problem with the money, it's a problem of management of the money. You need a good bookkeeper or the accountant, I can get you one. The whole problem is that there's enough money, but if you want to misuse the properties and misuse the taxpayers' money, I mean, this is not your properties, it's not your money, this is our money that we pay to it. Everybody will pay the state taxes, city taxes, if we use the phone, electricity, buy gas, or go shopping. So basically, you're using our money to do the job that is not done right. I welcome new board and new chair to NYCHA because the former administration was rather inefficient and basically inept to do the job right. So I hope that you will be more capable of performing the job right. We, the Taxpayer Coalition, will fry public officials in the court of public opinion and already delivered our demands to the national and international press. We also delivered our demand to Mayor Bill de Blasio, the Cecil House General Manager, NYCHA administration, Governor Andrew Cuomo, HUD administration, U.S. Attorney General, and New York State Attorney General. HRS administration and everybody else that would be able to help us to streamline the proceedings of the administration, and the new administration hopefully will do the job right. And corruption is the only reason we are in red instead of getting things done right. So I hope that new administration will really address the misuse and incompetence of the contractors and people who work for you guys, so we can have a job done, not to have to wait 10 years for the repairs like we used to do it before. Thank you so much, and I hope we wish you good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Zabler. James Rodriguez, followed by Arnaldo Arzu.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is James Rodriguez. I'm a resident of Rutgers Houses, and I'm a member testifying on behalf of Good Old Lower East Side, or GOLS, a neighborhood organization serving the Lower East Side for over 35 years. As one of the leading voices both locally and nationally, GOLS reaches over 10,000 residents each year. GOLS is committed to ensuring that public housing residents have a voice in the policies that directly impact them, preserving public housing for the long run and improving it for the future. GOLS supports the position of the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing. A few issues of specific concern include the use of NYCHA land for community redevelopment and community engagement in planning processes. First, GOLS is intimately aware of the affordable housing crisis that New York City has endured, especially throughout the past mayoral administration. Clients come into the GOLS office every day asking for help finding apartments that they can afford or struggling to meet rising rents in their current apartments. We recognize that the City of New York looks to developing NYCHA land as a part of meeting the affordable housing crisis. To this end, and in support of the position outlined by the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, Goals calls on NYCHA to ensure that any residential redevelopment to the maximum feasible extent be affordable to low-income New Yorkers within 50% of HUD AMI, and to give preference to current residents of NYCHA when leasing the newly built units. Further, the socioeconomic and environmental impacts on current residents, as well as the financial sustainability of any newly proposed housing and existing NYCHA housing, must be thoroughly studied before any development occurs on NYCHA property. In short, we cannot address the affordable housing crisis of New York City at the expense of existing low-income NYCHA residents. Last year, NYCHA engaged in a plan to bring infill to NYCHA without engaging the residents. This is wholly unacceptable and a violation of federal guidelines outlining minimum standards for public housing resident engagement. NYCHA must genuinely engage residents in every step of any process to develop public housing land. In alignment with the New York City Alliance, Goals proposes that NYCHA, at minimum, comply with the ULURP process and hold special public hearings on all Section 18 disposition proposals at the affected developments. Further, true resident engagement means consistently involving residents. This year, NYCHA held borough meetings to discuss the draft annual plan from the hours of 3 to 5 p.m. when many working NYCHA residents were unable to attend and to provide input in the process. Lastly, Goals would like to commend NYCHA and Mayor de Blasio's office for relieving NYCHA of the $70 million annual payment to the NYPD for this year. To ensure the long-term preservation of public housing and the Housing Authority's ability to cover maintenance costs and to make overdue capital improvements, the relief of these payments must be made permanent. Additionally, policing practices in NYCHA and in the city as a whole must be dramatically reformed to ensure that residents feel comfortable in their own buildings and neighborhoods. On behalf of good old Lower East Side, its board, its membership, and the community it serves, I strongly urge you to address our many concerns with the current draft annual plan in line with the recommendation presented by the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Arnaldo Arzu, followed by Ben Hershon.
Hello, yes. My name is Arnaldo Arzu. I'm here to address a couple of issues. The number one issue I'm here to address is for the elderly. And at one time, NYCHA had a policy where they would grandfather tenants into the apartment that lived in there for 15 years or more. We believe NYCHA should reinstate that policy. My second issue is the abolish of the Brooke Amendment that allows families to pay 30% of their household income towards rent. We believe that should be reinstated also. And third is our community centers. Our community centers is plagued with sponsors that are corrupt, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible, where they're supposed to provide programs for our community, and they just refuse to provide programs and or even allow the community to provide the program that they're not willing to provide. We had a petition to remove, I'm from the Marhaven section of the Bronx. We had a petition to remove Eastside House out of Mitchell Community Center, and not just Mitchell Community Center, all of the community centers in the Marhaven section of the Bronx feel that Eastside House is not doing what they're supposed to do to serve the purpose of the community. And after the town hall meeting, we would think that it would get better, but instead it got worse, and they shunned the community even more and brought in outsiders from Manhattan and Brooklyn to work out of our community centers instead of working with the people that's already there, begging them and submitting proposals to work out of that facility. And the fourth one is, the Section 3. Section 3 don't really work for our community. We see developers coming inside there that is getting paid millions of dollars from NYCHA, and also we know when they come to our community, they come with the promise of providing work for the residents in that community, and that's not happening, and there's no overseers to make sure that it does get done. So we just looking just to make sure that what they come in here to promise, that they come and do, and we're looking forward to working with whoever can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arzu. Ben Hershon, followed by Evelyn Sanchez.
Hi, good afternoon. Ben Hershon. I'm here to deliver testimony on behalf of State Assembly Member Felix Ortiz. The 51st Assembly District, which I represent, includes the neighborhood of Red Hook, which contains a large number of New York City Housing Authority units. There are 4 issues I want to bring to the authority's attention as you develop your plan for 2015. The first issue is about cameras. Many NYCHA apartment buildings do not have video cameras, and the ones that do often do not work properly. Cameras should be installed in all units, and the ones that are broken must be fixed. This is a critical safety issue. The second issue is regarding the locks on the buildings. In many NYCHA buildings, people have figured out codes to open the front doors without actually being buzzed in by a resident. There must be a safeguard against such code hacking. People should not be able to enter the building unless they are buzzed in by a resident or they have a key to the door. The third issue is regarding swifter evictions for apartments with drug raids. Many NYCHA apartments have turned into havens for drug rings. When raids are conducted by the authorities, the process of actually evicting these tenants is frequently long and drawn out. Residents should not have to live with the fear of illicit activities taking place inside their own homes. The eviction process should be quicker and smoother so NYCHA residents can live with peace of mind. The final issue is regarding tree replacement. Many trees that were destroyed by Hurricane Sandy have still not been replaced. This is important to maintain the beautification of the NYCHA communities. Thank you for your consideration of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Hershon. Evelyn Sanchez, followed by Maxine Mall. Okay, well.
Hello, I'm new on this. I am thankful to be here at the meeting. I do have several things, but I'm going to start with my main one. When NYCHA comes to visit the projects, I believe they should come and visit the projects like with no warning. Just come and see, because I noticed Ocean Hill, when NYCHA comes to visit to check the residents in the apartment, that's when they do all the cleaning and everything is spotless. Once they leave, everything is back to sloppy. So that's my main for now, but I have a list and I will do it later on.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Maxine Mall, followed by Kira Bennett.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Maxine Mall. I'm from East New York, Boulevard Development, and my concern, I have many, but the primary concern started after Hurricane Sandy. The contractors came in to cut down the trees that had fallen, but what happened is that they cut down 20 times more than the trees that had fallen. We live in an area called the Flatlands. Very few trees came up. In fact, more trees came up in Starrett City, which is about a mile away. And because I walk to Associate, which is about a mile and a half, I saw what had happened after Hurricane Sandy. My concern with New York City Housing Authority is that they allow contractors to come in and then they let them loose. The authority does not ask for a list. Well, let me see what you're going to do and how you're going to go about accomplishing this task. When they started to chat, we had approximately 10 trees that had fallen. They were sycamores, most of them. And they had come up, some was bent and some had come up by the roots. When Trees R Us, the contractors came, they started in the night. I heard the saws go off at about 11 p.m. And when I looked through the window, the first thing they went after was our cherry blossoms. Okay? People go to certain places to see the cherry blossoms. We had them on our development. We had approximately 9, they destroyed 5. I got my clothes on and I went outside and I asked them, why are they doing this? And I think they were surprised that I was even concerned. I wasn't the only one concerned. People on the other side of Stanley, they said they heard the saws in the night, and they wonder why they had to come at night. Well, they had a contract to fill, and they destroyed, they did not prune, they did not cut, they did not saw. They chopped, they hacked down these trees, and they had a group of their workers, and I think they assigned them to a certain area. There are trees I call the bird trees. They're usually at the side of the houses, and you hear the birds going at 6 o'clock. They destroyed about 5 of those. They destroyed, like I said, about 5 of our cherry blossoms and countless amount of our sycamore trees, and they were not trees that the storm had taken down. This was just a part of their contract. I was just livid. I called 311. They couldn't do anything. I wrote letters to the district. They ignored me. I went to the office. They ignored me. It was only after about maybe 3 or 4 months that Ms. Lauderdale, to her credit, she wrote me back and said she had investigated, and her workers said that the trees were all fallen, and that's not true. Okay. What I would like for the authority to do is to pay attention to these contractors that come in and feel that they should do whatever. Our community, we don't have the bridges. We don't have the river, okay? We have beautiful, strong trees. The development is 51 years old, and there were trees, I'm sure, that were 30 years old.
Thank you, Ms. Your comments are duly noted. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kara Bennett, followed by Joshua Barnett. Ms. Bennett? Mr. Barnett, Joshua Barnett? Joshua Barnett, followed by Gregory Brender.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Josh Barnett. I'm actually a NYCHA employee. I've worked in the Capital Projects Division Office of Design for the last 15 years. And my question for the board is, what is NYCHA planning on doing or going to do to put the brakes on the drive towards privatizing NYCHA and use the money to hire more staff who are desperately needed? You know, when I started at NYCHA in '99, 15 years ago, we had almost 16,000 employees. We're down to just over 12,000 now. We're operating with a skeleton staff. It has a direct impact on the residents and the quality of life. There's not enough groundskeepers, not enough maintenance workers, not enough community center or senior center workers. At 90 Church Street, 250 Broadway, Long Island City, we've lost almost a third of the people in my department. But the reduction in the head count is deceptive because we still see consultants, very high-priced consultants, crawling all over the developments and all over NYCHA. And again, this is not just a worker issue, and it's not just a union issue. Every consultant that's hired that costs 2 to 3 times what we make, that's money taken away from repairs, that's money taken away from new senior housing, that's money taken away from services that could be provided, and we know NYCHA is direly underfunded. I don't think there's enough money. As a federally funded agency, the money that the feds give to the war budget and corporate bailouts dwarfs what they give to vital social services. And we really got to press the people in Congress and the White House for more money, but NYCHA just has a really long history of making the worst of a bad situation by spending these very scarce dollars on companies that only have an allegiance to the bottom line and not an allegiance to preserving the last vital housing stock, affordable housing stock in New York City. And we know what happens in the past when services are privatized. If we look at public transportation, public health, public housing, corrections, every time a service is taken away from the people and given to the corporations, it means spending more money on less services and worse services. And so we stand with the tenants and saying, We have to make the best of a bad situation. Every other city agency is required to produce a cost-benefit analysis to show that it's cost-effective to outsource their services. NYCHA has always considered itself exempt. It shouldn't be, and it's not. If it is cost-effective, do it, but I haven't seen it, and I don't think anybody else has now. So please, we need the staff, we need to stop hiring the companies, and we need to bring NYCHA back to the people and spend the money where it needs to go.
Thank you for your comments. Gregory Brender, followed by Therese Huff.
Good evening, and
Good evening.
thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Gregory Brender. I'm here on behalf of United Neighborhood Houses. We are the Federation of Settlement Houses and Community Centers. More than half of our member agencies are headquartered in NYCHA developments, and most of them are serving NYCHA communities. We are part of the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing and fully support the recommendations laid out in their agenda. So I'll be brief because most of those are covered. The one thing I did want to talk about in particular as we look forward to working with NYCHA on keeping community centers open late and providing positive youth development programs. We believe this is a much better approach to public safety than what we've seen in the past, and that we, community-based organizations, including our settlement houses, we are now scrambling to make sure that these programs are both open and providing the kind of supportive programs that not just keep people safe, but offer services that empower young people to make positive decisions. And we look forward to working with NYCHA, NYPD, DYCD, and other city agencies to ensure that we can have positive services for the young people in NYCHA developments throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Therese Huff, followed by Lisa Kenner.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Therese Huff. I'm the TA president at Campus Plaza. When I walked in, I want to just reiterate, when I walked in, the chair was saying about how they want to make housing more safety and all that. Well, where I live in Campus Plaza, it's not so safety anymore. I got a building that my tenants are coming up to me complaining about. The door is broken. NYCHA didn't break the door, we know. They didn't, but the door is broken. It's been broken like that for 3 months. I made a call yesterday. They repaired the door. The door was broken again this morning. That's unacceptable. It should be unacceptable because we're getting junkies and everything in our building. And I don't know about anybody else. I'm not going to be walking to my floor and see the junkies shoot up with the needles in their arms. I'm putting up a police flyer and they think I'm the police. This is unfair to us. What's going on here? These doors have to be more secured. We have cameras. Nobody's looking at the cameras. It's clearly showing you who's breaking them, but nobody's looking at these cameras. And my cameras are very, very clear, so they can't tell me you don't know who it is. Call me in the office, I'll tell you who it is. I don't got a problem with it. And the other thing is, after 4 p.m. in building 205, we are getting, well, I'll say the apartment, I don't care. 21F is throwing brooms, lamps, canteen bottles, full bottle, 2-liter sodas. It's going to be a murder. We done called the police department 7 times or more. When they go upstairs, and I was told by a police officer, Chinese people don't do that. Oh, okay. I guess it's just blacks and Hispanics. That's what I was told. That's what I was told by a lieutenant. I got her name. That person is going to kill somebody. And when they do, NYCHA is going to have a lawsuit, and NYPD is going to have a lawsuit. They have to get in that apartment because the way I understand it, he smokes weed, he bugs out, and he throws everything out the window. I advise you guys to please get up there before he kills somebody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Huff. Lisa Kenner, followed by Juana Lino.
Good evening. Here I am. Right here, straight ahead. My name is Lisa Kenner. I'm the president of Van Dyke Resident Association. I've been living in Van Dyke for 55 years. So that means I was born and raised there. Some people can't leave, and I guess God made me stay there. But my question is, I've seen the good, the bad, and now I'm seeing the ugly. It's time to clean management office. from the manager, I don't care, from the superintendent, the assistant super, and the supervisor caretakers. They gotta go. One thing as a manager, you can't sit in the office and think everything is rosy. You gotta be out there walking. Now, 2 weeks ago, I was attacked by a caretaker. Now, if I'd attacked the caretaker, they want to lock me up. I did her a favor. I didn't get her locked up. But I don't expect her to be working where I live at. Because I want to live in a decent place, and a lot of other people want to live in a decent place. It ain't just about me. I have over 5,000 residents. Some people like me, some people don't. You know how that goes. You can't please everybody. But I can go to bed at night and wake up in the morning still happy about myself. And this is a non-paying job. People think you get paid. You don't even get 50 cents. You don't even get a Christmas card sometimes. You don't even get a thank you. But when you know you're doing what you're supposed to do. Now, my thing is, I walk through the development myself. I walk down the steps, around the steps. Now, when it come on weekends, every elevator and lobby should be clean. Just because we live in the public housing or the projects, what you want to call it, it's still our home. Now, when housing allow dogs to come in, that means that they want to clean the elevator and lobby every day. Nobody should have to get in the elevator, not because there's urine in there, because there's no urine in some of the buildings, but it's dirty. And they've been getting away with it for so long. You know, sometimes people want to push your buttons. They can't push my buttons. You know, I went to Grandmother Love Over Violence with the police department, with Chief Jaffe and the clergy. I said, that must have done something to me. Because when that girl said she was going to throw coffee on me, the old Lisa would have threw her head up against the car. But the new Lisa just looked at it like she was crazy. But I was still on my P's and Q's. Now, if I had to hit her first, and which I didn't hit her, I'd have been going to jail. But being that she gonna throw coffee on me, she's still allowed to stay and work in Van Dyke. Now, I think that's wrong. That's sending the wrong message. I'm not having it. But I want to say this. Management, you got to clean up house. You got to clean it. Because there's no way that you can bring a new building on Mother Gaston by the library for low income and supportive housing if you can't clean up Van Dyke. You know, I have residents that we haven't had refrigerators in 17 years. I keep a count. Refrigerators are 17 and the stove gonna be 15. Now, it's wearing out and everything else. Water and soap can't even clean them. They 17 years old. The motor runs out. You got people coming and fix the motor. Plus, we don't even have enough maintenance people. If we got 1,601 residents, how can 4 maintenance workers be for 1,601 residents? Impossible.
Ms. Kenner, please wrap up your comments.
Well, my comment is somebody better come and do something.
Thank you. Juana Lino, followed by Evelyn Cruz.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Juana Lino. I'm from Gowanus Houses. I just wanted to reiterate on some of the comments that were made earlier regarding holding our managers, you know, that work at our developments accountable. I think it's really important that they come and do the jobs that they're supposed to do. You want to hold the tenants accountable for them paying their rent. We should also hold our management also responsible on accountability, making sure that they come to work, walk around with the development to find out what's going on with the tenants. We had a manager who had a brain tumor who used to walk the development on a regular basis. Our current manager does not do that. She stays in her office. She's supposed to be available to the residents, and she only sees people on a case-to-case basis, and that's rare, and it shouldn't be that way. And I also wanted to say that NYCHA and also the Tenants Association, the Resident Association, should work in partnership. In order for all of this to be successful, there has to be a partnership. We have to hold people accountable, and there has to be respect. And in order for all of that to take place, again, we all have to communicate. It's all about communication. Communicating to the tenants what's going on. If new things are going to happen, let the tenants know. I don't want to take the manager's word for it by her telling me that the rent is going to increase, just because. I need to see it in writing. Things need to be in writing. Word of mouth, that doesn't work anymore. Everything needs to be written down on a sheet of paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lino. Evelyn Cruz, followed by Reginald H. Bowman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Evelyn, representing Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez. Thank you for the opportunity to extend brief greetings. Congresswoman Velazquez is not here as she is in Washington. We have House votes today. But we do want to say that we want to thank the chairwoman, the board members, all the public advocates, housing advocates and residents from public housing for being here tonight. It is important that we continue to hold NYCHA, the administration, accountable for the services that our public residents need. As a New York Seniors member of the Insurance, Housing, and Community Opportunities Subcommittee, it is my mission in Washington to see that NYCHA affordable housing programs are supported. However, as we all know, public housing across the country has been under siege by the Republican majority-led Congress. Again, this year, adopting the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development budget was funding cuts to housing programs. I want to assure, Congresswoman wants to assure that she remains committed to NYCHA. However, it is important for NYCHA to operate with greater efficiency to ensure that the federal budget fluctuations do not inhibit its ability to provide affordable housing and employment opportunities for its residents under programs like Section 3. The recent findings of the Comptroller's audit is of major concern to me and my colleagues in Congress, and I intend to further investigate the matter of funding. Section 3 is a game changer for the unemployed housing residents and/or a veteran, and it must be implemented to the fullest extent of the law. This program was not created to only enrich developers. NYCHA must also work with the city to resolve the outstanding MOU agreements as they pertain to police and sanitation services. When it comes to repairs, there has been great improvement over the past 12 months. However, more must be done. We must address the staffing levels, as we've heard here tonight, with groundskeepers and maintenance. We have some developments that have more groundskeepers than others. Many of those are in our congressional district. We have visited a development in our district like Bushwick Houses. We have over 1,200 residents. We had 3 caretakers. We wound up, myself, our Congresswoman Velazquez, Councilman Antonio Reynoso, and other electeds became groundkeepers for the day. This is not acceptable. We need to do better in leveling and assessing the staffing level, the maintenance levels of our developments, so we can ensure that residents can live in cleanliness and dignity. So that's one key thing for us. The other is the calling in center. When residents call the center, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't operate well. Information is miscommunicated and repairs are further delayed. So we're urging NYCHA to please revisit the call-in center to see if it needs to be decentralized or totally restructured. So there's some negative, but today's a positive as well. We're glad that you're here. We have a new administration that's listening, that's really engaging your public housing residents, and that is key for us. You're working on eliminating this landfill issue. That matters to the Congresswoman too. So we're going to be submitting comments in writing in detail, but we just wanted to at least extend brief greetings tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Final speaker of the evening, Reginald Bowman.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
To the chair and to the residents and to all of the distinguished people here tonight. I was instructed by my group that I represent. I'm the citywide council president of the New York City Housing Authority, which is also the umbrella of the Resident Advisory Board, which are the official residence government for all of the New York City Housing Authority residents in New York. Last night, the CCOP and the RAB that represents the duly elected resident government of the resident associations of the 344 public housing communities of New York stood united and decided not to support the current proposed NYCHA draft agency plan for funding year 2015. Although we stand ready to play our regulatory role in this process, the CCOP and the RAB voted and take the position not to support this current version of the plan. This version of the plan also includes a significant amendment to change tenant selection and assignment plan, TSAP, with a modification and changes to flat rent requirements that were put in by the 2014 Appropriations Act, which we strongly oppose. We are also publicly issuing a call to the New York City congressional delegation and the New York City elected officials to support public housing residents to use this opportunity to join forces with housing residents, industry professionals, developers, stakeholders, advocacy groups in creating and designing a real plan, something that we would like to call planning and creating public housing communities as urban infrastructures of lasting value. We also would like the elected officials and interest groups to join us in an action to change Section 210 of this new law, which requires housing authorities to increase public housing flat rents to a minimum of 80% of the fair market value. The law's flat rent provisions requires all public housing authorities to make requisite adjustments and come into compliance by June 1st, 2014, with the exception that no family's rent will increase by more than 35% in any year. The impact to NYCHA and its residents is significant. The Congress and the Senate of the United States and the elected officials and executives here in the city should not be attempting to balance the NYCHA budget shortfalls on the backs of already overburdened working and fixed income residents with a market rate position that we cannot afford. I mean, the last time I looked, I thought this was public housing and that there used to be a law that we only paid 30% of our income. Federal law requires the New York City Housing Authority to develop input from public housing residents, Section 8 participants, elected officials, and the public, a plan setting forth its major initiatives for the coming year, which is the 5-year and annual plan. But it's strange to me that these changes that have been made were done without real input, and even though NYCHA has met with the Resident Advisory Board and done what they're supposed to do, and all of their priorities of the coming year are outlined on pages 13 through 21 of the executive summary, and the new chair was appointed, and we applaud Ms. Olatoye, we applaud you, and your efforts to talk about the new 5-year, the new 10-year, 5-borough 10-year plan. And we also applaud the fact that you're going to focus on more employment opportunities to residents and retrofitting the public housing stock for sustainable future and investing in the resident employees. But there's something that you guys have to consider. We, the residents, have seen this before. Every year, and presently the proposed Housing New York 10-year plan has come on the heels of a previous plan, leaving the residents to wait again while the infrastructure of and services to the buildings continue and the resident services continue to deteriorate from a lack of consistent capital investment from the subsidy system of the federal government, HUD, and public-private investment. In other words, we're seeing a new plan on the heels of another plan that came from a plan before that, and we're still, the residents that are living in real time, not seeing the results of any of these plans make a difference in our daily lives. The NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, city, state, and government officials have had ample time in the last 20 years to manage the public housing real estate portfolio so that the buildings are in good repair, safe and secure, and that the resident support services are in operation to provide necessary options and opportunities equally to all the families of all NYCHA properties. No amount of lip service that started on January 1st of 2014 or reactions to tragedies fixes the long-term problems that we are facing daily in real time in our developments. Lastly, the resident leadership of the 5 boroughs stand united when we say enough is enough. And we demand that the present administration, the new NYCHA board and management, sit with us, not meet with us occasionally or come visit us. We need to sit together and do some realistic long-term planning for the NYCHA public housing portfolio that truly invests in the cures and covers the operating capital and management shortfalls that continue to plague this institution and its current culture. Now, normally I'm an optimist. Everybody loves the optimistic Mr. Bowman. But after 30 years of dealing with this, and this is my 30th year as a resident association president, and after many years of dealing with New York City politics and the changes in administration, I cannot stand here, and I've come here every year, and listen to this conversation, and I hear children in the background, and I keep praying every time I come that maybe the child who I hear will see something happen in their lifetime. We, the residents of the chief stakeholders, and the chief stakeholders indeed want to work with residents, NYCHA, all advocacy and interest groups and public-private partnerships and stakeholders and the elected officials to present real public policy and budgets that will ensure the restoration, stability, security, and safety of our buildings, along with the financial stability and responsible operation of the New York City Housing Authority institution. Now, we have gone step by step through this plan like we do every year, from outstanding federal issues to Superstorm Sandy. And we have reviewed these segments of the plan, and they need to be further reviewed with all of us together sitting down at the table to not have knee-jerk reaction solutions. You're talking to people who have lived in these developments for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Enough is enough now, and you have next generation NYCHA, and we are the next generation and have been for many years.
Mr. Bowman?
I'm going to wrap up right now.
Thank you.
Last sentence.
Fantastic.
And we definitely need to do something about this hearing process. We have reviewed these segments of the plan, and they need further review. And we reserve our right to submit further recommendations and changes to the plan. We also want you to know that we support and have signed on to the Alliance plan, except for the homeless segment. And we want you to understand that we will work with you to fix the problems, but we want a realistic commitment from NYCHA, the elected officials, and the advocacy groups to work together, and this time, let's get it done so that the residents can be confident with your real investment in the future of our facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. This concludes tonight's public hearing. We want to thank you again for taking the time to attend. Please rest assured that those of you who have submitted written comments, we will make sure that it's received by the appropriate parties. So good night and safe travels home.